Okay, so the magic machine tells me that I'm live. But I gotta tell you, my allergies are telling me that I'm in for a devil of a time. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm using a bit of a new technical setup. This is not the first time that I've used this document cam, though I think it may be the first time that I'm using this document cam with this computer. And we're off to a great start, right? Already, the magic machine is live and my schnozzle is in full effect. Okay, so on the board we have Numenera. Numenera is an RPG that originally came out in 2013. For those people who are new to my channel, and I don't know why today would be an exception and why we would have anybody new, but I'm obsessed with what I call nostalgia loops, the influence of the past on the present. I've for many decades I was primarily fixated on a 20-year nostalgia loop, on the way that what I saw as an undue influence on what had occurred 20 years ago on the present day, that what we were seeing or able to observe around us in the modern milieu of culture as just being essentially a repeat and a regurgitation of exactly what was happening on 20 years ago in the realms of media, music, the arts, culture, even down to seemingly historical events and cultural events. Moving on and studying it throughout the times, it started to occur to me that there were other loops in effect, and I started to uh, working with YouTube and on my other channels on YouTube, primarily the CW Chanter channel. That was my main channel on YouTube, where I was discussing elements of conspiracy theory, ufology, and New Age practices and New Age culture. I started to do this kind of funny thing in 2018, where looking at this phenomenon of super secret space program whistleblowers and Illuminati whistleblowers, we started to talk about the way that this kind of gimmick or this kind of cliche trope of these, people coming forward without any evidence, uh, how we could kind of do this as kind of a mock-up, and I designed this thing called the CW Chanter Secret Space Program Whistleblower School, and taking this 20-year nostalgia loop, it kind of spontaneously turned into this kind of ad hoc art project, theater of the absurd. And we started to do this thing called this time travel experiment, where we started pretending that we had this time travel school, and I kind of spontaneously created this kind of method of time travel by only listening to music from exactly 20 years ago, only reading books from exactly 20 years ago, only reading comic books, only watching movies and TV shows from exactly 20 years ago. But the bizarrest thing was, it actually seemed to work. And, we experimented with it. I experimented with it over the years. And it really, kind of took on a life of its own. I was interested in occult practices and New Age and esoteric practices, and this thing really started to have legs in my life and really took effect. Anyway, moving forward and moving on in time, on this channel, this role-playing game channel, through its evolution, its natural evolution in 2023, excuse me again, I would hit the mute button, but why? Um, when I could just disgust you and offend you. Oh, and the mic is so close to my body, it just must be horrendous. My deepest uh, the horror. Um, I wish I was reviewing like um, has Modifius optioned Dead Ringers yet by I don't know, was that Clive Barker? I forget. Human Centipede. I don't know. If they haven't yet, they will. Nostalgia loops in full effect. So 10-year nostalgia loops, 15-year nostalgia loops, 20-year nostalgia loops. I became obsessed with the nostalgia loops and working and incorporating them into role playing games, incorporating the role playing games from specific years on the nostalgia loop into the what I eventually started to call and we started to call the meta RPG practices and going places with them. We just started talking about the Dungeons and Dragons rule sets, the ubiquitous Dungeons and Dragons, rule sets, um, as perchance a kind of Rosetta Stone of a role playing game, history, kind of universal role playing game language that exists, perpetually throughout the history of role playing games. To be, a forever language, that if something we were to talk about something that would be, forever applicable at any point in history, because what we're talking about is like, role playing game rules that if the point of the time travel practice is to immerse yourself in a period of time. So Numenera from 2013, if we're trying to go on the 10-year nostalgia loop to 2013, if we know that a 10-year cycle in the human mind and the human spirit has a kind of energy, and therefore, to travel back in any particular time through this practice of just, concentrating on the media, on the world of a given year, by only, in training yourself by only, listening to the music of that era, only watching movies from that era over an extended period of time, only reading books from that period of time, watching old, news clips from that period of time, reminding yourself of that period of time to just, bring yourself back there. But knowing that, 10-year cycles, 20-year cycles are particularly more powerful. So it'll be easier to get back to 10 years back. So, and knowing that a role playing game involves you putting yourself back to a virtual space, therefore, it's, easier to kind of get back there, on a 10-year loop, on a 20-year loop than say a random year. That's the theory, at least. I mean, I really, a lot of this stuff is just experimentation for experimentation's sake. I don't know if this stuff works. I don't, to the degree that I see effects. Is it, mental masturbation? Is it self hypnosis? Is this a positive thing? Is this a good thing to do? Or are we risking driving ourselves insane? Is this a mental health hazard zone that we should be wary of going into? Um, is this a classic waste of time? Is there anybody out there? Does this fail on its face as an RPG review? Would you be better served if I were to just open up the book and tell you about, hey, how to play Numenera, rather than exploring the esoteric edges of how to play? What am I doing here? Telling you how to do Numenera wrong? Um, you know, if playing tabletop RPGs is a perchance outdated and outmoded form of entertainment, if Numenera itself from 2013 has been outmoded and outdated because the game was revised in 2017, though not by much. I mean, this rule set in 2013 is really, you could still use it. It's still very applicable. It's not a waste of your time to talk about the 2013 book if you come across the 2013 book. In fact, Noble Knight Games has the 2013 edition on clearance. So my understanding is that the 2017 version, its reissue, it kind of was split into two volumes, known as Numenera Discovery and Destiny. And the first volume, Discovery, is essentially this initial volume minus some material. though that material has been made available as a free PDF. And then it's got this other companion volume, Numenera Destiny, that has 3 additional classes. So Numenera, this original volume, has but 3 kind of what will be known or nominally known in other role-playing game systems as like kind of classes, the glaive, the jack, and I forget what they call their kind of mage class. The name escapes me for the moment, but we'll get into all that. But from Numenera, again, I apologize. Monty Cook's new cipher system role playing game, kind of general or generic or kind of universal role playing game system evolved. And it was through that evolution that kind of he returned back to Numenera, revised it in light of the evolving, cipher system. And the cipher system that we see, born in Numenera, is really, really, really interesting and really organic. And I really, really came to like it a lot, which is why, uh, prompted me to kind of, want to do, get into it and want to come and do this review. The cipher system itself that we see being born here in Numenera, and certain aspects of it that I found really interesting in regards to how it does away with hit points, and how it instead relies upon a kind of organic interface between the 3 basic skill stats and the way that those kind of skill stats are affected by the damage, and both the damage that a character will take in interaction with the environment as well as with interactions with enemy combatants, as well as the effects that those stats will experience through the use of those skills. But we'll see that when we get into character creation and the use of those skills in action. The use of those 3 skill sets, I mean, we'll see. There's certain things that that were very interesting to me about Numenera, as well as in the way that the system plays out. Like I said, that I thought did some very interesting things with role playing that I think were new and unique, that I saw here in this system, that were new and unique, that I didn't see in what we quote unquote traditional kind of role playing game systems that I had previously experienced, like Dungeons and Dragons, Tunnels and Trolls, and the classic, like multiverse system of kind of riffs with and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other, the Palladium systems that I was, had a lot of experience with. With its reliance on, just the standard stats and hit points, where, characters kind of like in a video game, a character, has hit points and they've got stats, and between suffering X amount of damage, they're still performatively the same character between having 1 hit point and 100% hit point capabilities and having 1 hit point. They're still basically interacting with the world at the exact same level, and they lose that last hit point and then they drop dead. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you'll see as we go through Numenera, there's a more kind of organic interplay that you see happening here, and the way that the experience points are happening, and the way that leveling is done. It's a lot it's something else interesting happens, or more organic kind of interplay. I think I see being suggested, is works. Also, something that's interesting that I saw is that this game was introduced in 2013, and Destiny, the video game Destiny, excuse me, happened in 2014. I got to tell you something. No one that I've seen talk about Numenera has brought this up. Numenera could be, in my mind, it doesn't have the kind of looter shooter aspect of Destiny, in the sense that, like Borderlands, there's so much of Destiny that involved the acquiring of loot and different guns and different armor and stuff. There's a lot of stuff in Numenera that's about, the acquiring of artifacts and ciphers and different equipment, though obviously tabletop role-playing game systems don't lend themselves to the kind of fast item customization and item generation that like a video game like Borderlands or Destiny can do. But as far as like the world and as far as the kind of science fiction meets high fantasy world beyond tomorrow where magic is where the technology is advanced to the point where magic is indistinguishable, and the fact that we got just three main character classes at the outset. There was so much when I first started initially reading the Numenera book, that I was like, this is kind of like Destiny the RPG. And I was just so surprised that no one had kind of picked up on the kind of like the abandoned modern world, the advanced world where populated by people who did not fundamentally understand the high technology around them, living like serfs in a world of high technology that they were kind of only able to access and understand a certain aspect of it. There was just so much about it that was, artificial intelligent, cognizant beings, interacting with, quasi aliens and semi humans and demi human mutants. There was just so much about it that was just like screamed Destiny, the role playing game, to me, that I was surprised that I had not seen anybody else say, "Geez, this is a lot like Destiny, the RPG." Though I could totally see how those paths wouldn't cross, because this really is kind of a much more geared towards a kind of storytelling kind of community, RPG kind of community, and Destiny was obviously so much more geared towards a first person shooter oriented video game community. So it's not as though those are two the Venn diagram doesn't lend itself to a lot of overlay there. Anyway, so if we open up Numenera, so I've got two things queued up for us. So I have the Numenera main 2013 RPG book here. Um, uh, Here I got the 2013 version, even though I knew that it had been reissued in 2017. This, as I've already touched upon, I, because of my own personal peccadillos and fascination with nostalgia loops, knew that I had to get the 2013 thing because of this over fixation on the nostalgia loops. I had to get the 2013 version. I got to tell you, my homies, I'm totally going to get, the other versions, but, I had to start at the beginning. Um, I am becoming so obsessed with Monty Cook. It's like not even ridiculous. And his consigliere from the old days, Bruce R. Cordell. Um, it's not even funny. Um, Also, let me go. I'm going to assume that so many of you guys, know about me and my fixations and obsessions with the nostalgia loops and the what my thing with the meta RPG of the incorporating of the role playing games into this time traveling thing that I'm doing, and this notion of we are going back in time through the consumption of these, you know, this media of these begotten times. And, so much of about it is about, exploring and coming to understand, a lot of what's really good, media, is what's happening. Um, and we have to come to terms with it, and we have to come to terms with the fact that something strange is happening with media and media recycling, and the fact that we're going over the 80s, the 1980s, over and over and over and over again, and the cumulative effect of no one being able to point to now when any given thing has happened or had happened in time, because time loses all meaning when you're recreating a movie over and over again. Like you have the movie Carrie, and it's been remade so many times, but when they remake the movie Carrie, it's a very strange movie. They remake it exactly the same over and over again. So people describe the movie Carrie, and no one can tell if they're describing having seen the same Carrie, because there's a made for TV version that was made for sci-fi or TNT in 2003. That's exactly the same movie, shot for shot, that was made with Sissy Spacek for the actual Carrie that was the famous one with John Travolta and everyone. And then it's the exact same shot for shot version that was made in 1998. You know what I mean? So just 5 years before the one that was made for TV, but the one that was 20 years after the Sissy Spacek version, which was 25 years before the made for TV version. And then they remade it again with the young lady from Let the Right One In, and it was again they did it exactly shot for shot. It's insanity. And then in Numenera, it's the whole point of Numenera, the whole point of this world is this: it's Earth, but it's a billion years in the future. And obviously, a billion years is this hypothetical, hyperbolic number, it's this theoretical number, right? And it's all in this quote that we all know: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Sir Arthur C. Clarke. I also want to point out something about Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke most likely, right, um, was a animal of the worst kind. An animal. Whenever you see interviews with Arthur C. Clarke at the end of his life, he's on a foreign island surrounded by children. If I'm lying, I'm dying. I'm orientation queer. You're allowed to be any flavor of strange you want to be. You can be this, you can be that, you can be non binary, you can be whatever you want to be, as long as your playmates, right, are of an appropriate age. Now that I've suggested to you that there's something strange about all the end of his life cycle Arthur C. Clarke interviews, you go back and you Google and you watch on YouTube for the end of the road Arthur C. Clarke interviews, where he's on the beach wearing the sarongs like Peter Sleazy Christopherson from friggin' Coil at the end of his life's journey. When they remember the videos that Peter Sleazy Christopherson was shooting with Coil for Love's Secret Domain. Those videos I wasn't comfortable with at all, and I'm not really comfortable with the Arthur C. Clarke videos either. And you shouldn't be either. You know why? You know why, and I know why. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy. But you know what else is crazy? That it took this long. That it took me. I wonder if Monty Cook will ever watch this video and be like, "Holy crap! I can't believe I'm Monty friggin' Cook, and That's right. What the heck is that guy doing on the beach? What are you talking about? Who hires little kids to make their tea? If that's not right, I don't give a goddamn if you're Arthur C. Clarke. I don't care. 2001. You be Hal better be of age, motherfucker. I don't give a damn. Anyway, yo, every Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's like kids. You know what I mean? It's like third grade teacher or something. You know what I mean? It's volunteer for the arts. You know what I mean? Guy clears the fence. It's like kids. Anyway, sharing your bed with it's the nicest thing you could do. You, nice. Anyway, I'm just saying. I don't know, guys. Listen, don't. Hey, listen. Ah, Numenera. Excuse me, Arthur C. Clarke. Hey, hold on. A billion years in the future, I'll receive a cease and desist letter from the estate of Arthur C. Clarke. Listen, folks, a billion years in the future, it is the ninth era. Now, first of all, so I've already mentioned like occult practices and esoteric practices and my interest in this. A guy like Monty Cook, I don't know, he's probably a scientific rationalist, but any of these guys and gals that hang out and do this RPG, they do the comics, they do the sci-fi writing, they do the fantasy writing, they they look at this stuff. A lot of them do the research. You get exposed to this stuff. So there's been 8 worlds prior to this world in Numenera, and Numenera is the ninth world. So this stuff is pregnant with information. I'm pulling a tarot card from 2003. The High Priestess, right? Makes perfect sense. 2 on the money. Marked with a 2, but the third trump in the deck. The High Priestess, esoteric wisdom, not knowledge learned, but ways naturally understood. You don't get to these numbers accidentally. This is the ninth world. 9 months, and then the baby's born. 10 leads to completion. There have been 8 worlds, and this is the ninth. Worlds have come and gone. At one point, this Earth was a hub of a intergalactic civilization, but that fell apart. Humans at one point were in control, but then they weren't in control. Alien civilizations have come and gone. We don't know who came and gone. The losers and the victors are lost to history. All that's left now is the ruins and the remains of the past, and eyes pointing towards the future, a future that could possibly grow from presumably the womb of this past. Will this past be a graveyard? Will these artifacts and these remnants be toxic waste pools and puddles choking out and proving that this is a graveyard, a mausoleum to what was? Or will this be the fuel, the sustenance moving across the umbilical cord to this new generation of Homo superior, or what this new generation is to be? Will they move further out again from the past? So this world is littered with the artifacts of the past. So being obsessed with the past myself, with the remnants of nostalgia, the 90s that were the 70s, rotting upon the corpse of the 80s that were the 50s, feeding it back upon itself with the horrorcore gothabilly 90s, fumigating amongst rave nostalgia for disco. Rinse, lather, repeat, rinse, lather, and repeat. Watching my generations of my daughter's generation, trying to watch them make sense of it all. I look to this world and I see natural analogs for what we were doing, because what we were looking at the fighting fantasy games, game books, and we were taking spells that we were grabbing off of films like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or Once Bitten or My Best Friend is a Vampire, you know, or any movies. We were talking about taking visual cues from movies and turning them into spells that we could then infuse into the three basic characteristics of fighting fantasies. And we were talking fighting fantasy characters. We're talking about how you could take them and put them onto Dungeons and Dragons characters in their basic statistics, or onto skills, or onto weapons. And so here we have a world that is infused with this notion of a world built upon worlds of the past influencing the future, and things like different types of these elements of the past, like the Numenera, which are these artifacts. The world is actually called Numenera. In this Earth, a billion years in the future, the various continents, via technology or via the natural shift of the continents, have come back together, like Pangea, right? If the world started at one point with one great supercontinent that broke apart via tectonic shifts into the various continents, they've come back together. Time has become a loop via science or via seismic time. It's all come back together. And in this ninth world named after these elements of the technology that the people don't understand, that's why it's like magic. Numenera. People with knowledge of the relics of older worlds divide them into three types: artifacts, ciphers, and oddities. So we have a framework for pieces of technology of the past. So if we take our kind of meta RPG practice, we could see how we can work into this world. And if you're not interested in this meta RPG, you can just look at this review of this game and just understand that it could work otherwise for you. Just understand that. So if you're just otherwise, it's just this game. Numenera. So artifacts. So here the artifacts are large devices that typically can be used more than once to produce the same result. An artifact might be a belt that creates a shield of invisible force to protect the wearer, or a flying skiff that carries people and cargo from one place to another. So an artifact is a piece of technology from the past that is a recurrent effect that people are reasonably useful, that know how to use. Artifacts make their users more powerful. They make life easier or better, right? A piece of technology that is easy to use and fairly predictable in its use. There's also ciphers, are usually small, minor devices that most characters can coax a single effect from before they are depleted and become curiosities or decorations. They might include a quick injection designed to repair physical damage in a living creature or handheld object that, when manipulated properly, become a weapon that explodes with tremendous force. However, ciphers are dangerous when gathered together because they create radiation and harmonic frequencies that are inimical to human life. So I think you can only have, like, there's a limit to how many ciphers you can have, and the game is always encouraging people to use these ciphers. So we don't have, in, like, if you're used to, like, computer RPGs or JRPGs, like for Nintendo games or whatever, they don't want you to have, like, a mega elixir disorder, where you have a device that you never use because you're waiting for the perfect time to use it. So that if you find a cipher that's, like, will explode, like a hand grenade, they don't want you to always be holding on to that hand grenade and never using it. So they're always telling you, You're going to find another thing to use. So use it. You know what I mean? Use the cipher. Oddities are the relics that are neither ciphers nor artifacts. They serve no obvious purpose but have strange functions that are at least curious, if not downright entertaining. Examples include a piece of glass in a metal frame that shows peculiar images, or a box with three bells that ring at unpredictable times. Not everything from the prior worlds can be understood. In fact, much of it cannot. Looking at the ninth world from the 21st century, whatever. So it's just, I think that that's very interesting because very interesting possibilities for people to play or generate artifacts, ciphers, or oddities that can incorporate the elements of the past that we've been thinking about. So, how to play Numenera. What I wanted to do here, what I thought might be interesting to do here is before I jump into this, one of the best things that I found was uh, there is some free resources that I found for Numenera. And one of the free resources that I found was there on Drive Through RPG in 2018. They released a free adventure that included pre-generated characters and also included basically, I guess, what you could consider kind of quick start rules that explained the rules and went through the rules like very succinctly and very kind of quickly. And I think if we kind of read those, it might be like an easier and better, like, go through, like kind of as like a kind of a quick start for us. And then if I kind of come back later, we can go through again through the character creation at a later point in a follow-up video, and that might be better. Like I've noticed, like, so no one has joined me in the live chat, which is fine. Like Fridays always tend to be a little bit slow for me anyway, even on the main channels. So if I do that, and especially with my voice kind of like dying out, that might be the easier way to do it. We could try that because I think that went a little bit easier. I also will say this is that I know that from the 2013 rule set to the 2017 reboot, very few things changed. I know that, like, so here under ciphers, there's this distinction between anotic and occultic ciphers. I know that basically what happened is that rule kind of went away, and I know that the rule on armor got simplified. So the thing that kind of changed is nothing will kind of be problematic from going from 2013 rule set to 2017 because nothing becomes harder. Things just kind of become, my understanding is that things just become easier. So if you were trained in 2013 Numenera and then got to a 2017 virtual table or 2017 like live action table, I don't think you get caught out there not knowing what the heck was going on, because I think the only thing that would happen is that some of the things that you were used to keeping track of, the armor especially, would become just easier for you to do. Because it's my understanding that some of the calculations with armor were kind of cumbersome, and so they simplified it. But hold on 2 seconds, one more. Hold on, I'm actually gonna mute you for this. Hold on, wait. So I think if I actually switch over to go to I like that the high priestess because I think that actually works. If I go to the 2000 and if I show you this, let me do this. Yeah, make sure you see this. Yeah. So this is if you, we so I guarantee. So check this out. If you go to Drive Through RPG, let me do this one. Boop. If you go to Drive Through RPG, the name and go to and do a search for Numenera, the name of the file is Ashes of the Sea, and it's I remember being free, or pay what you want. I think it's free though. And it was because it was for Free RPG Day 2018, and it comes with pre-generated characters, and it comes with the full adventure, and it comes with the how to play Numenera. It starts with understanding your character, and then it goes into like how to play Numenera. And you'll see you even get because it's got the bad guys here, so whatever. So here we go. So if we start over here, if we read a couple of pages, we'll kind of get the beginning, middle, and end of the basics of what it ends up being the cipher system, and then we'll be able to use that kind of as our starting point, for going in. So I think that the lead in for the kind of the world lets you know kind of why I'm interested in Numenera for the world. I told you a little bit about the cipher system and the way that the stat pool interacts, uh, with the world instead of hit points. That I thought was a little bit more interesting, and maybe you'll see how that kind of plays out as we move forward through going through these words and these pages, and then we'll see what happens next. Okay, so here we go. Understanding your character. Character descriptor, type, and focus. Each character has a simple statement that describes them, like I am a adjective here, noun here, who, verb here. For example, Navid is a heroic glaive who thunders, and Loban is a clever nano who focuses mind over matter. In this sentence, the adjective is called your descriptor. The noun is your character type. The verb is called your focus. In some games, character type might be called your character class. It's the noun of the sentence. I am an adjective noun who verbs. You can choose from 6 character types: Arcus, Delve, Glaive, Jack, Nano, and Wright. In the 2013 Orange book that I have in front of me, the 3 main characters that they start with are Glaive, Jack, and Nano. The Glaive is basically your warrior that relies upon. There are 3 main stats in Numenera and in the cipher system in general: strength, speed. I'm sorry, apologize. Might, speed, and what is this? Intelligence, right? I believe so. And intellect. I apologize. Right there in front of me. Might, speed, and intellect. And the glaive is basically your warrior type that will concentrate in might. Your jack is your in betweener, and your nano is kind of like your wizard or your sorceress. And this is like the future technology is so indistinguishable, so advanced, and no one really understands how it works. It just works because the nanos are so invested in people's systems, because they are so ingrained, because people already have the receptors, the nanoreceptors of the indicator devices in their genetics or what. Who knows what the heck is going on, but it seems like magic. So what's so interesting about those 3 initial classes is, like I said, that brought me right back to the days of Destiny, where you have those 3 basic classes, which is like kind of like the stealthy, the fight, the Titan, and the basically the throw the lightning around guy, right? It's been a million years since I played the Destiny. Destiny 2 sucks. So I'm at a loss for remembering anyone except the Titan. And then whatchamacallit, it also reminded me of Tunnels and Trolls, right? Because you have the warrior, or you have the spellcaster, or you have the rogue, right? The middle ground. And then you have these new guys that apparently show up in the Destiny expansion. Actually, you have Discovery. That was so crazy, as I'm saying that. And then when they did the reboot of Numenera, the book was called Numenera Discovery, and the other book was called Numenera Destiny. Bow! You see what they did there? Maybe I'm not the only guy that saw that. Hey, boo, boo, boo. Hey, boo, boo, boo. Your descriptor places your character in the situation, helps provide motivation. It's the adjective. We're through the looking glass here, people. Project Looking Glass. Oh my, I'm seeing the future. I'm seeing the future in the past. That's called just hindsight, you idiot. If only there was some way to monetize this. You're going to monetize tabletop role playing game. You can't monetize that. Why not? You'll lose money. Why? Because it's in the past. You're doing it today, what you should have been doing in 1975. I was only born in 1975. That's because that's how behind the times you are. Because you're an idiot. What you want to be doing is what is profitable today. I can't do that. Why not? Because I'm an idiot. I'm no good at the things today. The computers and stuff. No one likes me. No one's watching my streams. I'm playing the old games. Oh, I got blocked. Some girl, there was a boy. She's like a born again Christian, but she also reads tarot cards, and she talks about twin flames, which is crazy. And I got banned from her live chat. She was a chubby. I liked her. She had a little hat. She looked like a little fat little Cartman. Oh, I was so in love. And she banned me. She blocked me. I was asking too many questions. Oi. Focus on what your character does best. Are you sure? No, it's not. It's not. It's not what I do best. It's the verb of the sentence. I'm an adjective, a noun, who verbs. Oh, fails. I fail. Character stats. Every character has 3 defining characters. That's called sadness or stats. Might, speed, and intellect. Might, that the concepts of strength, endurance, constitution, hardiness, and physical prowess are folded into might. Might governs actions from forcing doors open to resisting disease. Oh, okay, a good thing. I'm going to be healthy. It's also the primary means of determining how much damage a character can sustain. Not much. Characters interested in fighting focus on might. Speed embodies quickness, movement, dexterity, and reflexes. Speed governs dodging attacks, sneaking around, or throwing a ball accurately. Guess what? Nimble, fast, or sneaky characters have good speed stats. Okay. Intellect. Intellect encompasses intelligence, wisdom, charisma, education, reasoning, wit, willpower, and charm. Intellect governs solving puzzles, remembering facts, telling convincing lies, and using mental powers. Characters good at communicating effectively or wielding Numenera stress their intellect stat. Okay, nice. I'll invest in that one. See what happens there. Pool, edge, and effort. Each of these stats has 2 components, pool and edge. Okay, I can explain this. Your pool is raw ability and your edge represents knowing how to use what you have. A third element ties into this concept, effort. When your character really needs to accomplish a task, apply effort, pool. A pool is the most basic measurement of a stat. Comparing the pools of 2 creatures gives a general sense of which is superior. For example, Naveed has a might pool of 16 and thus is stronger than Chowry, who has a might pool of 12. Most average characters have a pool of 9 to 12 in most stats. When your character is injured, sickened, or attacked, you temporarily lose points from one of your stat pools. The nature of the attack determines which pool loses points. Physical damage from a sword. Hold on. I'm going to sneeze. When your character is injured, say blah, blah, blah. The nature of the attack determines which pool loses points. Physical damage from a sword reduces your might pool. A poison that makes you clumsy reduces your speed pool. And a psionic blast reduces your intellect pool. You can rest to regain lost points from a stat pool. So you're recovering points in pool. So what's great about this is that like, okay, so you have a pool of these of points in these stats, right? Whenever you do an action related to one of these stats, you spend points from this pool to execute one of those stats. But you also may have points in this edge characteristic of maybe 1 or 2 points, depending on your level or your tier. So that edge is a standing like cost reduction, as we'll see in the next paragraph. So much like in fighting fantasy game books or in advanced fighting fantasy, like with the luck statistic, the luck stat that you spend like to test your luck or to like redo a roll or whatever, you're spending, you exert effort, or when you exert effort, that we'll see in another thing. So these stats are not static. When you do something with your might, when you do something with your speed, when you do something with your intellect, you see reflected in your character that taxation, which I think is cool, that you don't necessarily see in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Where your character swings his sword, he does his attack, and then he's still, at maximum, he's still swinging. There's no stamina loss like you see in like a video game, which is cool. Like if you're playing like PvP in Dark Souls, right? You got to take into account your stamina bar. You swing that broadsword, you swing that bastard sword, you got to take into account the fact that you did a heavy attack, right? Edge pool is the basic measurement. Here's edge. Pool is the basic measurement of a stat, right? So like you have this thing in pool, this basic number in pool. Pool is the basic measurement of a stat, but edge is also important. When something requires you to spend points from a stat pool, edge reduces the cost. It also reduces the cost of applying effort to a roll. For example, Lobin wants to use the Onslaught ability, which costs 1 point from his intellect pool, right? So he's got this ability that is an intellect ability. So whenever a person activates a particular ability, that ability is tied to one of these particular stats. So you activate an ability is tied to a stat. So you take from that stat pool to do that thing. So he's doing an intellect thing. So he's going to take from the intellect pool, but he's got an intellect edge point. So he subtracts 1 from that cost. So he subtracts 1 intellect edge from the activation cost, and the result is how many points he must spend. Since the result is 0, the ability is free. Effort. When your character really needs to accomplish a task, apply effort. Applying effort requires spending 3 points from the stat pool appropriate to the action. Thus, if your character tries to dodge a speed roll and wants to increase the chance for success, you can apply effort by spending 3 points from your speed pool. The game master determines the difficulty of the task, 1 to 10. Effort lowers the difficulty of the task by 1 step. This is called easing the difficulty. So if the difficulty is 5, using effort makes it a 4. This must be done before you attempt the roll. Okay, so let's pause for a second to understand this. If we go, I think this might be easier if we go down first. Maybe it'll be easier if we go down. Task difficulty. So to understand this is that when you do a lot of games like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, the person, you roll, and then you're adding all these modifiers, right, to your roll. You got +1 on the sword, you got +1 for you this, the. In Numenera, they approach it almost from the opposite direction. And what you're always trying to figure out is, you're always just trying to figure out like the one number to hit, right? So they're always just trying to figure out what the difficulty is on a scale of 1 to 10. And then you're trying to figure out what the character has that makes it easier. So, for example, if you're trying to figure out the character wants to jump over a ravine, right? And the DM figures out that it's going to be the task is going to be challenging. So they'd have to hit a 15 because it's always 3 times the task difficulty. Okay? Now, understand this is that there's going to be like a 10, like that's impossible, right? But if a person has skills and assets that can make it easier, they can make an impossible task possibly just formidable, and then they could actually make it accomplishable. But so anyway, so you have a challenging task. It means the person has to hit a 15, but they could ease it by either applying effort, by spending points to do effort, or maybe they're trained in it or something. They could bring it down. And so all that you're doing is you're saying you start off with the base difficulty of the task, and then you figure out the calculations to figure out how to modify it, right? So there might be things that modify it up, down to ease it, or there might be hindrances that bring it up. And then all you're doing is figuring out at the end of the day the steps up and the steps down that'll figure out what the actual end task difficulty is going to be, and then therefore what the target number is going to be. And that's the point of trying to make it as simple as possible, right? And so I just wanted to jump ahead to that to make it a little bit more easier to see how it works. Okay. Pools based measure step, but edges also we get that. I think we get that. Okay, effort. Okay. When your character really needs to accomplish a task, apply effort. Applying effort requires spending 3 points from the stat pool appropriate to the action. Thus, if a character tries to dodge, okay, the easing the difficulty. So that's what I showed about easing difficulty. So if you need to do something, you could apply effort. It's going to cost you 3 points from the appropriate pool. Now, you can recover points, and we'll see how that works too. But you'd spend your points to do this effort to ease the difficulty. So the difficulty is a 5, using effort makes it a 4. So this must be done before you attempt the roll, okay? Every character has an effort score, which indicates the maximum numbers of levels of effort that can be applied, right? So under certain circumstances, a person can apply more than one level of effort. They can play if a person can do 2 levels of effort, they can pay 6 points and ease 2 steps. When you apply effort, subtract your relevant edge from the total cost of applying effort. For example, let's say you make a speed roll. You apply 1 level of effort, which will ease the task by 1 step. Normally, that would cost 3 points from your speed pool. However, you have a speed edge of 1, so you subtract from the cost. So it only costs 2 points from your speed pool. Skills, equipment, and special abilities can ease a task and can be used in conjunction with effort. I also want to make the point that I might as well say this as well. I'm showing you this Ashes of the Sea. I'm doing it for the purpose of fair use. I'm just providing an editorial review of the rules, trying to take you through the rules. I'm in no way, shape, or effort trying to impinge on the product rights of Monty Cook. All praise onto Monty Cook and Broussard Cordell, his lovely manservant, and Shauna and all the other blessed females over at who truly call the shots over at Monty Cook Games. Give them hell, ladies. Fuck those guys. You know what I mean? Everyone knows who really runs the show. You know what I mean? Monty Cook. Everyone knows he's a figurehead. Anyway, effort and damage. Instead of applying effort to ease your attack, you can apply effort to increase the amount of damage you inflict for any kind of attack. For each level of effort, you inflict 3 additional points of damage. When using effort to increase the damage of an area attack, such as the explosion created by a detonation cipher, you inflict 2 additional points of damage instead of 3 points, but those points are dealt to all targets in the area. Even if one or more of the targets in the area resists, you still inflict 1 point of damage to them. Now, folks, look at how fast we are moving through a large portion of these rules. When you see that this is not as easy as Troika, when we get to the basic rules, handout and burn down of Troika, it goes on 1 page. Folks, the basic crib notes for Numenera go on like 2 pages. Okay? Skills and abilities. Your character is trained in a handful of specific skills. For example, you might be trained in sneaking, climbing, and jumping, or social interactions. A character's level of skill is either trained, reasonably skilled, or specialized, very skilled. So there's really only 2 skill levels. If you're trained in a skill relating to a task, ease that task by 1 step. Remember, we talked about easing. That's going down one step. That's a 5 going to a 4 going to a 3, right? If you are specialized, it is eased by 2 steps. Remember, there's only 2 levels of skill level, trained or specialized. A skill can never ease a task by more than 2 steps, but you can use a skill and effort together, right? So you can combine skill and effort, okay? We'll go back up here. You can always attempt an action, any action. You do not need a related skill. In other words, you having training in climbing doesn't let you climb. It just makes you good at it. Anyone can still try to climb. Some characters have inabilities. If a character has an inability in a task, the difficulty of that task is one step more difficult for that character. This is called a hindering a task, right? So, for example, I think what we're talking about here is this. If you're trained or specialized in climbing, you get to ease your climbing roll, right? Your difficulty in climbing is eased by either 1 or 2 steps. If you're not trained in climbing, you still do climbing. It's just that the difficulty is as it is, right? If it's a challenging difficulty, if it's a 5, you still got to roll the 15 or whatever. Now, if you have a hindrance, you got a hindrance. I'm assuming that is if the character has no legs. I mean, I'm assuming that if there's something that's going on, or if there might be something like if there is some sort of a challenge or something going on with the wall, maybe. Special abilities, character types and foci grant player characters special abilities. Using these abilities usually cost points from your stat pools, listed in parentheses after the ability name. Your edge in the appropriate stat can reduce the cost, but you can only apply edge once per action. For example, let's say a nano, that's like a magician or sorcerer type character in this worldview, with an intellect edge of 2, right? So that means that any taxation of their intellect pool they'll have a discount of 2. Wants to use their onslaught ability, which costs 1 intellect point. They also want to increase the damage by using a level of effort, which costs 3 intellect points. The total cost for the action is 2 points from their intellect pool, 1 point for the onslaught, plus 3 points for using effort, minus 2 points from their edge, right? So it would be, here's my math. They also want to increase the damage, so it'd be 5. This is 1 point from the onslaught plus 3. That's 4 minus 2. Yes, it's still okay. So I get it. Sometimes the point cost for an ability has a plus sign after the number. This means that you can spend more points or more levels of effort to improve the ability. But I guess but remember that's subject to your effort max. You have a max level of effort that you can exert for based on your character tier. Remember that. Many special abilities grant a character the option of performing an action that they couldn't normally do, such as projecting rays of cold or attacking multiple foes at once. Using one of these abilities as an action onto itself, and the end of the ability's description says action to remind you. Some special abilities allow you to perform a familiar action, one that you can already do in a different way. For example, an ability might let you wear heavy armor or add 2 points of fire damage to your weapon damage. These are called enablers. Using one of these abilities is not considered an action. Enablers either function constantly. I apologize. Again, my nose is just driving me bonkers tonight. These allergies. Oh, right in the mic. Oh, unbelievable. I'm just saying all sorts of records. I'm just saying all sorts of records for, you know, excessive just beauty in the realm of human interaction. And I'm just, abandoned by God, no fans, no friends, no countrymen. It's just wonderful. It's not considered an action. Enablers either function constantly, such as being able to wear heavy, blah, 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 If a special ability is enabler, the end of the ability's description says enabler to remind you you have no friends. Ciphers and oddities. Ciphers are blah, 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 blah. We've been over ciphers. Oddities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, artifact. We don't need to read that. We already did that. We did that. The shins, whatever. That's money. How to play Numenera. Here we go. So here we go. Numenera's played it. We don't need that. Everything's basically a D20. Okay, here we go. This is how you play Numenera. The player tells the GM what they want to do. This is a character action. The GM determines if that action is routine and therefore works without needing a roll, or if there's a chance of failure. If there's a chance of failure, the GM determines which stat the task uses, might, speed, or intellect, and the task difficulty, how hard it will be on a scale of from 1, really easy, to 10, basically impossible. And basically, folks, remember that this is basically the cipher system. So everything that we're about to go over basically is also going to work for all real cipher system games. The player and the GM determine if anything about the character, such as training, equipment, special abilities, or various actions, can modify the difficulty up or down by 1 or more steps. Decreasing the difficulty is called easing. Increasing the difficulty is called hindering. If these modifications reduce the difficulty to less than 1, the action is routine and therefore works with no roll needed. If the action still isn't routine, the GM uses its difficulty to determine the target number, how high the player must roll to succeed at the action. See the task difficulty table, page 24. We've already gone over that. The target number is always 3 times the task difficulty. So a difficulty 4 task has a target number of 12. To succeed at the task, you must roll the target number or higher. It's a rollover system. The GM doesn't have to tell the player what the target number is, but can offer hints, especially if the character would be reasonably know if the action was easy, average, difficult, or impossible. The player rolls a d20. If the roll is equal or higher than the target number, the character succeeds. That's it. That's how to do anything, whether it's identifying a strange device, common raging drunk, yada yada. Taking action. Each character gets 1 turn each round. On a character's turn, they can do 1 thing, an action. All actions fall into my God, has this forsaken me. All actions fall into 1 of 3 categories: might, speed, or intellect. Just like the 3 stats, many actions require die rolls. Rolling a d20. I'm losing speed. Every action performs a task, and every task has a difficulty that determines what number, blah, 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 blah. When do you roll? When the mood hits you. I'm losing steam. I got to get out of here because my note, I'm losing it. So I'm losing it. Modifying difficulty comment. So here's what we're going to do. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take, I want to get to the weapons though. I think what we should do is this. Maybe what's the wisest thing to do? The wisest thing to do might be to leave it here and to say that we will pick up on weapons. Here, let me stop sharing. So we come back to here. Let's come back to here and say this. Let's come back to squares. Let's do this. Let me stop. I've been here for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Let's pause here. And before we go into weapons and more, let's pause and call this part 1. And we'll come back at a later date and we will continue our discussion. And we will continue our discussion. And we'll see what happens. In the comment section below, let me know what you know about Numenera. Let me know what parts of the conversation you think are stimulating, if any. What you'd be most interested in hearing more about, if anything. Or if you don't give a damn, you can say that too. We pulled the High Priestess. I'll pull another card um, from the 2003 Egyptian Tarot. Makes sense. I'm curious where we could go with this. I'm very curious. I think this is a world. Ooh, 23! Get out of town. Get straight the fuck out of town. Get the fuck out of town. 2023, 421, 2023, and we end up creating a 23 with the three of discs. And the three of discs, guidance from heaven under the auspices of above. We write and we scribe. I may be a dirty scribe. I may get kicked out of the house of love. I may be accused of being a Pharisee by the fatties. But I ain't so bad. She should have given a Yiddish boy a chance. 23 Skidoo. I'll be back for you. Get your fat ass back over here. Numenera. I'm on the prowl.